How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today's video we look at one of the most overpowered tier 6 tanks in the game, and that is in the form of the Hellcat 105. This tank is absolutely disgusting in game. It really is one of those tanks that Wargaming kind of slipped up on in terms of creating a balanced tank, at least in quotation marks. Yeah, this thing is just unbelievably better than any other tier 6 in my opinion. Even things like the KV2 where you have a lot of fun in, this one beats it every single day of the week. It just has that consistent games where you can just do a ridiculous amount of damage. Now me personally, I don't know if I'll show a clip later on, but basically my average damage in the Hellcat 105, bearing in mind it's a tier 6, is 2,200 average damage. In a tier 6, 2,200 average. That is ridiculous for a tank of this tier. The DPM on this thing is absolutely broken, to say the least. 7.8 second reload, 320 alpha damage as we decide to crash into one of our teammates. Sorry there, mate. But yeah, 320 alpha damage. Absolutely crazy, in my opinion at least. When you can consistently put that out against tanks that, you know, you half health in one shot pretty much. So of course, STRV, we actually bounce off of him. Now, yes, you might see in the bottom of the screen I am firing heat rounds. Well, that's because in the Hellcat 105, you fire standard rounds and they're worse in every way. So yes, the heat rounds do more damage than the AP rounds. It really is that just ridiculous as our shell goes flying up into the air. Yeah, this tank is just unbelievable. Look at this Stug 3G, the tier 5, we put one into him and now he's been just completely ruined, his game's over. Yeah, just ridiculous, and this is the point in the battle where it just becomes apparent just how disgusting this tank is. When you pop the combat rations boost, which I run in pretty much every single tank in the game just because it is so worth it in terms of you getting that boost to pretty much everything within the game. Here you can see we've racked up a lot of damage so early on. We're on 1,600 damage already. Make that 2,000 damage nearly and 600 assistance. Of course, that's a good game for any tier 6, you know, where we finish now. But whether the game or not allows us to get some more damage, I don't know. Well, you'll see. But basically, this tank is just one of those whereby if you play it stealthily, if you put the camo net in, you put the coated optics or advanced optics, whatever you want to call it, if you put those in this tank, it basically becomes a spotter. You can spot so easily. It has very little kind of weaknesses within the tank. I don't know what I was aiming for there. It doesn't have armour, so don't get me wrong, you aren't going to be bouncing very many shots in this tank. But when you can slap them for 320 back, yeah, there's not very many tanks in the game that are going to outtrade you, at least at tier 6. Of course, when you get into your tier 8 matchups, it might be slightly different. But even when you get into your tier 8 matchups, you've got the alpha damage and the penetration on these heat rounds to be able to just win anyway. So it just becomes this situation whereby you are just better in almost every single way than any other tier 6. You have the ability to play against tier 8s. You have the view range to outspot tier 8s. You literally are just ridiculous. You've got this DPM that is probably in the region of a tier 8 tank. In terms of how quickly you reload and put out damage. You're probably the same as a medium tank at tier 8. So bearing in mind this is a tier 6. Ridiculous. Don't know how Wargaming thought that this was balanced. Maybe because of the one weakness being the reverse speed of this tank being so bad. Yeah, it is. You know, you have to actually move forward if you want to get out, if that makes sense. We picked up 2,740 damage there. 878 assistance. That's a pretty good game for the Hellcat 105, but it certainly isn't the best game I've ever had, because I think that actually goes to a 4,500 damage game in the Hellcat 105, carried against I think it was like 3 tier 8s at the end of the game. Yeah, outspotting them, using the mechanics very well. Of course, this gameplay was a very quick one in terms of, you know, the game finished so quickly. We managed to mop up a massive amount of damage, considering, you know, this was a tier 6 game, or a tier 7, but very little amount of tier 7s in the game. Yeah, crazy game, crazy tank. If you can get your hands on it, then I would 100% recommend this. There is no other tank like it. There is no tank that really can compete with it at tier 6 in terms of a tank destroyer. Take a Hellcat, slap a massive gun on it, and it is just way better, in my opinion anyway. Now we'll move on to another game clip here. We're going to have a look at one of the ones where, yes, I might not have won the game, but it does showcase the sort of thing that you can actually do when you get into these higher tier matchups, of course. And the final gameplay is in Canals. This is a really nice map for the Hellcat 105. Of course, this is a very heavy kind of tier 8 game. There's not very many tier 6s within the game. I think I'm one of like 3 or something like that. Definitely a game where you're heavily favoured towards the tier 8s. You know, when you're in a tier 6, of course when you're coming bottom tier, you are at a massive disadvantage, especially because I feel like the disparity between a tier 6 and a tier 8 is a lot bigger than tier 8 to tier 10. There's a lot of tanks that just have no competition when it comes to coming up against those tier 8s, because the penetration is often so low that even on your premium rounds you can bounce off of the tier 8s. Now, on a map like this, where do we usually take a tank at the very beginning? Well, I tend to, if I've got a bit of view range or a bit of potential to spot, then I will actually take the tank into a position like this, where I can get into these bushes here on the corner at D3, and then I can basically spot the opponents that decide to make a move up into our kind of area on the left here. And of course, if they try and push A1 area on the map, we basically spot them as they go across, and therefore allows our team to get some hits into them, at least hopefully. Now, of course, you don't want to be too aggressive in a tank like the Hellcat 105. You know, you do have such terrible reverse speed, so if you do get caught out in any area, you don't want to be in an open area. So as long as you've got some sort of cover either side of you, so you know that I can pull back around or move around, or if I really need to, aggressively push towards the enemy to get into a cover spot. So always think about those things when you're playing in your tank destroyers, especially ones like this where, you know, you can't reverse. This is the top speed reversing backwards, 8 kilometers an hour. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Now, what am I going to do here? Well, we need to get rid of this AMX-12T and then sort out this flank, because we are losing the K line very hard, whereby the majority of their team has gone that way, and of course we have gone this way. Now, that's pretty simple, or pretty usual, I would say, in World of Tanks. Of course, we shut down the AMX-12T there. But yeah, that's an ordinary kind of thing on World of Tanks. The lemming train, one team goes one way, one team goes the other, and then whichever team decides that they're going to be smart about it, usually wins, and so they position themselves in the right kind of area to be able to deal a bit of damage back to the enemies and make sure they're in a advantageous spot to be able to put out your damage very easily onto opponents that are being aggressive and moving out into the open, etc. That's kind of how you win these games. Now, what you see me doing here, of course, is actually moving kind of further up. So what I'm thinking here is I need to get rid of this 50 TP if my team are actually going to turn around and realise that we are being capped. So if I can help with him, that will get him out, and then hopefully we'll turn around then as a team to be able to put some damage out. We put one into him, and now I've just decided, you know what, I've got to go. I've got to help out, try and spot, at least use my view range that this tank gets. I think it's about 420 meters. Roughly, when you've got all of the perks. So that's not base, that's with all of the perks on the tank. So remember that, that's not actually the base amount. And of course I have all of the perks. We are running a 9 skill crew in this thing, of course. That's just because I've got so many of them, and why would I not want an advantage when I'm playing in a tank like this. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this tank. Of course, make sure you put on the camo perks, so things like camo expertise, muffled shot, stuff like that. Silent driving, I mean, you could put on it. Not necessarily needed 100%, but it definitely is useful for you guys. that are trying to remain undetected, and for maps like Prokhorovka and things like that. So what you see here, we've reset the cap completely. We've now got a little bit of a problem in terms of we are the only tank kind of surrounded by, what, 5 tanks? So we need to start getting rid of them. And to begin with, we're going to start with this Alf Klarings Panther. Unfortunately, we bounce and he manages to snap us there with a snapshot. And yeah, I was feeling a bit salty after that one, especially when we fully aimed, or at least nearly fully aimed. And he obviously didn't. Now, it's time to get rid of this Progetto. This is a very, very deadly tank to be able to face, and certainly one that you don't want to be coming up against. Now, in terms of what we're doing here, we get hit by the by that medium tank that's far away, the Type 59-2, who, as you'll see in a second, has a massive one on for us. As you can see, he literally wants no one else but me. He's going to ignore the STA-2 there. Unfortunately, we don't manage to get away, but we do manage to do 2,400 damage in a tier 8 heavy game. 817 assistance damage, which is a good one, don't get me wrong. Nothing massive or massively great. You know, we did lose the game at the end of this one. But it certainly gave me a little bit of a good feeling knowing that, you know, sometimes you do outplay the higher tier tanks within the game. The Type 59-2 who took us out was actually a good player. Whether he knew, you know, to get me out the game first, not entirely sure. But yeah, definitely was a good player and managed to pick up a very nice game for him on this game. Of course, we've got an artillery and a heavy tank left. Yeah, basically they mop up the damage on the enemy team, and then we lose the game at the end. Now, with regards to what I think about these kind of tanks within the game, and wargaming producing tanks that aren't necessarily historically accurate. I mean, this one might be. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not well versed in like the history of something like the Hellcat with a 105mm gun. I'm sure that it could be possible. But with regards to tanks that are generally console specific, at least in terms of World of Tanks, yeah, they tend to be pretty broken comparatively to ones that come out on PC, like tier for tier. So we've got a lot of tier 5s, tier 6s that are just insanely good comparatively to the tech tree versions. When you compare a Hellcat standard one, it's pretty good. It has the camo, it's got the speed, it's got everything you need for a tank destroyer, and that's a tech tree one. Then give it a massive gun and a gun upgrade, and then call it balanced. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what wargaming we're aiming for there, but we did manage to kind of show off what this tank is all about, and hopefully you'll see my statistics in the vehicle. We managed to have an 81% win rate in this tank, which is crazy. After 38 games as well, 38 games, 81% win rate, 2,200 average damage, an insane tank. I think I was averaging 7,000 WN8 in this thing. Just ridiculous. Can't believe how this is actually in the game. Don't know if I would say to remove it, because obviously people have paid for it now, but definitely bring some of the other tanks at tier 6 in line with something like this, because of course when you're doing 2 and a bit times as much damage as a Dragon in a tier 6, I think something's going slightly wrong. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I know it was a shorter one than usual, and it was kind of showcasing one specific tank in the Hellcat 105. Hopefully you did enjoy the video, and of course we will have plenty more content for World of Tanks Update 6.0 coming out very, very soon. If you did like it, please hit the like button and also subscribe. And a massive thank you to all of the channel members on the channel for supporting a little bit extra above and beyond. Yeah, just absolutely thanks for that, and really do appreciate it. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.